Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when the heart shatters so loudly, it feels like the whole world should hear it, and yet the world keeps spinning as if nothing happened. When I said goodbye, I thought I was closing the door on love, but I didn't know I was opening the door to myself. Goodbye is never simple. It's not just walking away from a person, it's walking away from the version of you that believed you couldn't live without them. And for the longest time, I believed that story, that without their love, without their presence, I'd be nothing. But here's the truth: love, when it demands that you lose yourself, is no longer love. It's a slow erosion of your soul. I had been bending, shrinking, and dimming my light to fit into their world, until one day I realized my world had become too small for me. Saying goodbye felt like cutting off a part of myself. The silence afterwards was deafening. The bed felt bigger, the days felt longer, and my heart felt emptier. But in that emptiness, something began to whisper, "You're still here." And that means something. When we talk about saying goodbye, we're not just talking about a polite word or a casual parting. We're talking about that heavy, unshakable moment when your heart feels like it's being pulled out of your chest. It's that instant when you realize something you once thought would last forever has reached its final page. Every single one of us knows, in some way, the weight of that moment. Whether it was a romantic partner, a close friend, or even a part of yourself you were forced to let go of, we've all faced the pain of separation. And in that instant, the world feels a little colder, a little quieter, and a lot emptier. There's something universal about the ache that comes with letting go. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, or what your story looks like. Heartbreak doesn't discriminate. It shows up without warning and leaves you gasping for air. In love, that goodbye can feel like a betrayal, not always because someone did something wrong, but because life sometimes forces us into choices we didn't want to make. One person leaves, and the other is left standing in the ruins of what once was, wondering how to rebuild from the ground up. In those moments, the mind plays cruel tricks. It replays memories like a broken record, highlighting the laughter, the soft touches, the small acts of love that once felt eternal. It convinces you that you'll never feel that way again, that somehow your best moments are now behind you. You start questioning yourself. What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Could I have fought harder? It's not just the person you lose. It's the dream, the future, the life you imagined together. It's grieving the version of yourself that only existed with them. And perhaps the hardest part is that goodbyes don't just hurt because of what's gone, but because of the uncertainty that follows. We fear the void. We fear the loneliness. We fear that no one will see us the way they did, even if that vision wasn't always complete or accurate. That's why people hold on longer than they should. Not because they don't know it's over, but because they don't know who they'll be without it. It's important to acknowledge that this pain is real, that it's not something you can just move on from with a snap of your fingers. The heart doesn't work like that. It needs to mourn. It needs to process. It needs to sit in the discomfort of absence before it can learn how to live again. Too often, we try to rush past the grief, to pretend we're fine, to fill the void with distractions or temporary fixes. But the truth is, those raw, aching moments are part of the process. They're not a sign of weakness. They're a sign that you loved deeply. When I talk about acknowledging this universal pain, I mean giving yourself permission to feel it fully, to understand that heartbreak is a language we all speak, even if our stories are different. Because when you accept that you're not alone in your pain, you start to see that while goodbye may be deeply personal, it is also profoundly human. And in that shared humanity, there's a quiet kind of strength, the kind that tells you, even through the tears, that one day you will stand up again. When we face the moment of goodbye, it often feels like the world has slammed a door on us and locked it from the other side. In that instant, there's this sinking feeling that everything we built, everything we dreamed about, has collapsed into dust. You tell yourself you've lost the love of your life, that the story you believed in has ended, and that there's nothing waiting for you on the other side but emptiness. That's the illusion that goodbye is the end of everything. What we rarely see in those first moments is that an ending can also be a beginning. The human heart doesn't like change. It clings to what's familiar, even when it's no longer good for us. That's why a breakup or separation can feel like you've been stripped of your identity. You're not just losing the person, you're losing the version of yourself that existed with them, the routine you built, the comfort of knowing where you belonged. And in those early days, you don't yet realize that this loss is also an invitation to discover a part of yourself you've never met before. We're taught from an early age to see love as a kind of completion, as if we are puzzle pieces waiting for someone else to make us whole. And so when that person leaves, it feels as though they've taken our wholeness with them. But the truth is, they never carried our completeness. They only reflected parts of it back to us. The rest was always inside us, buried under compromise, under dependency, under the quiet fear of standing on our own. Goodbye is the moment life rips away that mirror and says, "No, look at yourself without them." At first, it's terrifying. Then, if you allow yourself to lean into it, it becomes liberating. The reason this feels so impossible in the beginning is because our minds are wired to associate the unknown with danger. We imagine a future without them, and we see only darkness. We picture empty rooms, cold nights, and conversations that will never happen again. What we don't picture, because we can't yet see it, are the moments where we begin to breathe again, where we try something new simply because we can, where we start making choices without asking anyone's permission, where we begin to recognize our own voice as something worth listening to. When you're still standing in the ashes of what used to be, it's hard to believe that anything beautiful could grow there. But endings have a strange way of clearing space for beginnings. Goodbye might strip you bare, but it also strips away the illusions. The idea that you can't live without them, the belief that your happiness depends on someone else's presence. When those illusions fall away, what's left is the raw, unfiltered you. And that's where the discovery begins. You start to notice that you're stronger than you thought, that you can carry more than you imagined, that you can stand in your own light without needing someone else to hold the lamp. In time, you realize that what you lost wasn't your whole life. It was a chapter, and chapters end, not because the story is over, but because a new one is ready to be written. Goodbye may feel like the final page, but in truth, it's the first line of a new beginning, one where the main character is finally you. Love has a way of convincing us that sacrifice is a sign of strength, that giving more of ourselves than we can afford is proof of our devotion. In the beginning, it feels noble, even romantic, to pour every drop of our time, energy, and heart into someone we care for. We tell ourselves that this is what love is supposed to look like: selfless, unconditional, all-consuming. But slowly, almost without noticing, that giving can turn into losing. Not losing them, losing ourselves. There's a subtle shift that happens in many relationships. At first, you bring your whole self into the connection, your dreams, your boundaries, your sense of identity. But somewhere along the way, you start bending. You compromise a little more than you should. You put their needs before your own, not occasionally, but habitually. You silence parts of yourself to keep the peace. And the dangerous thing is, you often don't realize it's happening. You're so focused on keeping the relationship alive that you don't notice you're starving yourself in the process. It's easy to mistake this for loyalty. It's easy to believe that love is meant to hurt sometimes, that real commitment means holding on no matter what it costs. But love that consistently asks you to abandon yourself isn't love. It's imbalance. It's the slow erosion of who you are. And the tragedy is that by the time you see it clearly, you've often gone so far down that road that you barely recognize the person looking back at you in the mirror. We rarely talk about the quiet weight that builds up in these moments. It's not just emotional exhaustion, it's the creeping emptiness that comes from living for someone else's approval. Every time you suppress your truth to avoid conflict, you chip away at your own voice. Every time you ignore your needs to prioritize theirs, you teach yourself that you don't matter as much. And the more you do this, the more you start to believe it. What makes this so hard is that it doesn't start with bad intentions. You love them, you want them to be happy, and you're willing to make sacrifices for that. But when sacrifice becomes a pattern, when it becomes the foundation of the relationship, it's no longer about love, it's about survival. You're trying to hold the relationship together at the cost of your own wholeness. And no matter how much you give, it's never enough to fill a void that isn't yours to fill. The truth is, love isn't about losing yourself. Real love invites you to bring your full, authentic self to the table, and to have that self celebrated, not diminished. It's about two whole people choosing to walk together, not one person carrying the weight of two lives. But when you're caught in that cycle of over-giving, it can be hard to believe you're worthy of that kind of love. You start thinking that maybe this is just the way relationships are, that maybe the problem is you. And that's why this keynote matters, because recognizing the weight you're carrying is the first step to setting it down. It's about seeing that love should never cost you your identity. It's about realizing that if you have to disappear for someone else to stay, you've already lost something far more important than the relationship. And sometimes the only way to reclaim it is to be willing to walk away. There comes a point in some relationships where you know the truth long before you act on it. You feel it in the pit of your stomach, in the heaviness of your chest, in the way conversations start sounding like echoes instead of connections. The moment of goodbye doesn't always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it's been standing in the doorway for months, waiting for you to gather the courage to look it in the eye. And when that moment finally comes, it isn't neat or graceful. It's messy, it's raw, it's a storm breaking inside your heart. The act of saying goodbye is not just words spoken aloud, it's the culmination of hundreds of silent realizations. It's the moment you acknowledge that no matter how much you love someone, no matter how deeply you've intertwined your life with theirs, staying is costing you something you can't get back. And still, even with that clarity, it feels like tearing a part of yourself away. Because the truth is, goodbyes aren't just about leaving someone else. They're about leaving behind a life you once believed in. In that instant, you are confronted with every memory you've made together. The first laugh you shared, the nights you stayed up talking about dreams, the little rituals only the two of you understood. These moments flash through your mind like a film you didn't want to end, and yet you know that the ending has already been written. And as much as you might wish otherwise, you can't unseen what you now know. Love alone is not enough to fix what's been broken. The emotions at that point are almost unbearable. You're afraid of the future without them. You're afraid of the silence you'll come home to. You're afraid of lying awake at night wondering if you made the right choice. But there's another fear that runs deeper. The fear of losing yourself entirely if you stay. That fear whispers louder than the comfort of the familiar, and it's the one that pushes you to speak the words you've been holding back. When you say goodbye, it's rarely clean. There are tears, pauses, long silences where your heart begs you to take it all back. Your mind fights with itself, replaying every reason to stay, every promise you once made. But somewhere inside, you know that to keep holding on would be to betray yourself. That knowledge doesn't make it easier, it just makes it necessary. And yet, even in that moment, there's a strange duality, grief and relief, pain and freedom. You're heartbroken because you're losing someone you love, but you're also quietly aware that you're stepping into something you need. You may not see the shape of it yet, but deep down you sense that you're walking toward yourself, even as you're walking away from them. That's what makes the moment of goodbye so profoundly human. It's an act of love, not just for them, but for you. Love for the person you're trying to become. Love for the life you know you deserve. And while your voice may tremble, while your heart may break as the words leave your lips, you understand, maybe for the first time, that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is saying goodbye while fear is still sitting in your chest, and trusting that somehow, on the other side of this heartbreak, you will find yourself again. After the words are spoken and the door finally closes, there is a silence that feels almost unbearable. It's not just the absence of their voice or the emptiness of the spaces you once shared. It's the sudden stillness inside you. For so long, your days were filled with the rhythm of another person's presence. Even in moments of quiet, there was the comfort of knowing they were somewhere close. But now, that quiet feels like a void. The air feels heavier, the walls feel closer, the world feels too large and too empty all at once. This is the silence after goodbye, and it can be the hardest part. The noise of the breakup, the emotions, the tears, the conversations, at least gave you something to focus on. But once that fades, you're left with a different kind of confrontation, the one with yourself. Without their voice guiding, distracting, or validating you, you're faced with the raw sound of your own thoughts. And at first, those thoughts are not kind. They question you, they blame you, they remind you of every mistake, every moment you think you could have done differently. Loneliness creeps in slowly. It's in the way you reach for your phone only to remember there's no one to text. It's in the empty side of the bed that feels colder than it should. It's in the meals you cook for one and the way laughter feels like something distant, something you're not sure you'll hear again. This is the stage where many people feel tempted to run back, not because the relationship was right, but because the silence feels so wrong. But here's the truth about this silence. It's not just emptiness, it's space. It's the space where you begin to hear yourself again, even if at first it's only a whisper. In the beginning, it might feel like this quiet is swallowing you whole, but over time, it becomes a place where you can start to breathe, without their presence filling every corner of your mind. You have room to notice what's been missing, not from the relationship, but from yourself. Healing doesn't happen in the noise. It happens in the moments when you're sitting alone, learning to be okay with your own company. It's in rediscovering the things you love without needing to share them with someone else. It's in taking walks without explaining where you're going. It's in letting the stillness wrap around you until it feels less like a cage and more like a cocoon. In this silence, you start to understand that you are not defined by who is standing beside you. You start to reclaim the parts of yourself that got lost in the noise of the relationship. And maybe most importantly, you learn that you can survive your own company, that you can even enjoy it. The silence after goodbye is not there to punish you. It's there to give you the chance to rebuild from the inside out. It forces you to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the dreams you've been neglecting, the strength you didn't know you had. And while it may feel like the loneliest place in the world at first, in time, it becomes the birthplace of your rediscovery. It's in that quiet, uncomfortable stillness that you begin to realize you haven't just lost something. You've been given the space to find yourself again. There comes a moment after the ache and the silence when you realize that the real work ahead isn't about forgetting them. It's about remembering you. For so long, your worth was reflected back to you through their eyes. You felt beautiful when they said you were. You felt valuable when they needed you. You felt loved when they chose you. And without them there to mirror those feelings, it can be disorienting, even frightening. You begin to wonder who you are without their approval, their validation, their presence. This is where the journey of rebuilding self-worth begins. It's not a quick or glamorous process. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it forces you to sit with truths you may have avoided for years. When we've tied our value to another person, we often don't realize how much of our self-esteem depends on their reactions. A compliment from them could lift you for days, but their criticism could sink you just as quickly. That's not self-worth, that's conditional worth, built on the shifting sands of someone else's perception. The rebuilding starts with small acts. It's looking in the mirror and choosing to see yourself with kindness, Even on the days when you feel broken, it's making decisions for yourself without second guessing what they would have thought. It's rediscovering hobbies, passions, and little joys that belong entirely to you. And perhaps most importantly, it's learning to validate your own feelings without needing someone else to tell you they're valid. In the early days, this can feel like lifting a weight you're not strong enough to carry. You might still crave their voice, their reassurance, their presence. But as you continue to practice showing up for yourself, something shifts. You begin to realize that the person you've been waiting for, the one to make you feel safe, loved, and enough, was never supposed to be someone else. It was supposed to be you all along. Rebuilding self-worth is also about boundaries. It's about recognizing the moments where you once said yes to things that hurt you, just to keep the peace. It's about learning to say no without guilt. It's about no longer tolerating treatment that makes you shrink, just so someone else can feel bigger. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're the fences that protect the garden of your own self-respect. This process isn't just healing, it's transformational. You start to stand a little taller. You speak with more certainty. You stop chasing people who make you question your value. You begin to attract relationships, romantic or otherwise, that don't require you to abandon yourself to keep them. And with each choice you make for your own good, you send a quiet message to the world: I am enough as I am. There's a moment, somewhere along this journey, when you realize that you no longer wake up thinking about what they would think or feel. Instead, you start waking up asking yourself, what do I want today? What do I need? What will make me feel alive? That's the sign you're not just surviving without them, you're thriving as yourself. Rebuilding self-worth after goodbye isn't about becoming someone new. It's about stripping away the layers of dependence, doubt, and self-neglect until you remember the person you were before the world and love convinced you that you weren't enough. And once you find that person again, you hold on to them fiercely, because now you know your value isn't something anyone can give or take away. It's yours, always was, always will be. There's a point in healing when you look back and realize something profound. The goodbye you thought was destroying you was actually saving you. In the beginning, it felt like a cruel theft, as though someone had ripped love from your hands and left you standing in the wreckage. You saw it as loss, as failure, as the proof that you weren't enough to make it work. But somewhere along the way, without even noticing, you started breathing differently. You began walking a little taller, speaking with more certainty, and making choices that felt more like you. That's when the truth hits you. You didn't just lose them, you found yourself. This transformation rarely announces itself with fanfare. It happens quietly, in moments so small you almost miss them. It's in the day you make a decision without doubting yourself first. It's in the moment you laugh, really laugh, without feeling the shadow of their absence. It's in the way you no longer look for their name to pop up on your phone because you're too busy living your own life. Those are the milestones no one warns you about, the ones that prove you've crossed into a new chapter. Finding yourself after goodbye doesn't mean you stop caring about them or erase the love you once felt. It means you finally see the relationship for what it was, not for what you wished it could be. You understand that love, no matter how strong, should not require you to abandon your own dreams, values, or identity. You see that the parts of yourself you thought were lost forever, your independence, your creativity, your voice, were never truly gone. They were just buried beneath the weight of trying to be what someone else needed. What's remarkable about this shift is that it doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you see love altogether. You start to realize that real love doesn't complete you. It complements you. It's not about finding someone who fills your empty spaces, but about being whole enough on your own that you can share your life without losing yourself in the process. That understanding becomes a kind of armor, not to keep people out, but to protect the person you've worked so hard to reclaim. And here's the thing, once you find yourself again, you begin to understand that goodbye wasn't a punishment. It was a turning point. It was life's way of saying, "You've been looking for yourself in someone else for too long. It's time to come home." That realization can bring a deep, almost quiet kind of peace. You stop replaying the past for clues on how to fix it, and you start focusing on building a future that's yours to shape. Sometimes you even feel gratitude for the goodbye, though you never imagined you would, not because the pain was easy. It wasn't, but because it forced